Hey guys, it's Bryce and Barb. We're here in Bryce's Corner. Today we're going to look at the thoracic cage. The thoracic cage is all of your rib cage area, that part of your spine. The problem with the thoracic cage is sometimes for a lot of people it can get very tight and very rigid, especially for a lot of our older clients. That tends to be a little bit tight in this area. Now these are big problems for especially a lot of those people out there that are trying to play golf and try to have good mobility. But then there's also the health concern, which is, do they have limited respiration or breathing? If they have a limited breath, how is that affecting the rest of the body? So we have to remember that our thoracic diaphragm, which is a big muscle that's very strong in our body, is helping to manage that pump system of our body. And as it manages the pump system, every time we breathe in, the diaphragm presses down. It helps to pump all the organs in the abdominal cavity. It helps to move the heart and the lungs in the upper thoracic cavity. But if we're breathing incorrectly because we're restricted in this rib cage, there's a whole string of health concerns that can go along with that, including neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, and so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that all of this moves, not only for the fun of life, which is going out and maybe playing sport, or today a lot of people play pickleball, even though we see a lot of injuries with that, but also just for the health concern of managing posture and movement of the rib cage so that we can breathe correctly. So we're going to go through a handful of exercises so that your thoracic cage can stay healthy. So a lot of the people that we know today, because of a tech world, we're on our phones, we're on our computers, we're sitting in our desks, right? Desk jockeys, where we're in a big rounded posture. And especially if we're sitting there for a long period of time, all of this can get very stuck and immobile, because as we compress the rib cage forward, there's less room for the front of the rib cage to move and expand with our breath, which is shutting down our air capacity, but then it's making all of these muscles back here very tight. So these are all of our postural muscles that we don't want to be long and weak. We want to be very active, mobile, and strong to maintain our spine upright. So one of the first things we're going to look at is doing some different stretches around the thoracic cage. The first one we're going to do, actually face it that way for me. Okay. So what we're going to do is we want to stretch one of the big muscles around our rib cage, which is your lat muscle. Your lat muscles are the muscles that go all the way from the shoulder area or arm. They come down all the way through the backside of the rib cage and attach all the way to the pelvis. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take this arm up overhead. We're going to take our other arm and grab that elbow. We're going to sit in a very tall position. Go ahead and widen your knees just a little bit. Sometimes we can be kneeling on the ground, we can be standing, you can be in a seated posture. Usually we want to make sure that the stance is wide, so it's helping to stabilize the pelvis. She is going to press this elbow up away from her hip, making sure that she's not arching that lower back. We want to make sure that the pelvis is tucked, so we're in a tucked position. And as she presses that elbow up, she's going to follow into a side bend here. And as she follows into a side bend, go ahead and turn your head to the left a little bit. Tuck that chin in like you want to pull from the back of the head. Press the elbow away, side bend. Now push your rib cage out into my hand like you're trying to reach towards my hand as you side bend. And then we're going to create a little bit of rotation away from that side to try to create tension all the way through this sling of the lat area, through the back side of our body. So she's going to breathe into this area. When she breathes, we're going to get that expansion through the ribs, which is going to help to elongate. She's going to stay active, pressing that elbow away with her pelvis tucked. She's in a side bend towards the opposite side and a rotation towards the opposite side to create this tension, and you can feel all of that coming through here, right? Okay. So she can slowly relax that. Let's go ahead and go to the other side. As we do the other side, our action of the exercise, aside from getting into this position, is to hold this for 30 seconds, usually times three on each side. And again, we can direct how we want this tension to be. As we press the elbow away, as we rotate, she can try to press that rib cage in different areas to try to concentrate that stretch. A little more rotation, a little more side bending can kind of direct where we're a little bit more tight. And as we breathe in, you can feel the expansion of the rib in this area that can be potentially restricted by really, really tight lats. Go ahead and straighten yourself out. Now typically, again, as we're sitting at a desk, our arms are to our sides. So when they're to the sides and we round, then that muscle goes into a bit of a shorter position, and that can be tighter over a period of time, especially if we don't move our arms a lot. We don't get that slide and glide of the shoulder blade around the rib cage, and the ribs don't move as well. So that's going to be our lat stretch. Again, 3 times 30 seconds on each side. Give that a shot. Try to feel those parts of the rib cage open up with that stretch. Okay, the next stretch we want to look at is working with the thoracic cage actually in flexion. So if we think about, a lot of times we see this flex position on a lot of people. A lot of people are actually stuck in this flex position. If we want to mobilize it, we got to be able to move all the tissue around this area so that we can improve that flex position into a better posture. So we're going to do a 3-part stretch here. This is going to be something that we call a GPS, which is a global postural stretch. She's going to sit up nice and tall, nice posture here. Those arms are going to press forward. They're parallel. The hands are showing with the fingers spread. And then as she presses forward and the shoulder blades separate, she's going to follow that line of tension along her arm and now press her middle back towards the wall behind her. So I actually want you to round here as you elongate. So the chin's going to stay tucked in, the tail's going to stay slightly tucked, and she's going to find the distance between her spine and rib cage between her hands. As she presses forward, she's pressing back here. Now she's going to breathe through the stretch. As she breathes, she can feel the expansion of those ribs move in the back of the body. And again, we're going to hold this for 30 seconds. We can do this 3 rounds. The other variations of this is if I move that arm up into position, now we're going to follow that line of tension down into the lower part of the thoracic or the lower part of the spine. And now she's trying to push that down and back towards the floor as she reaches those arms up into the corner of the ceiling, usually about 45 degrees. Again, the chin's tucked in, but we're staying long through the spine. She's reaching away. Now we want to focus that breath in these lower ribs to try to expand those lower ribs. We can hold this for 30 seconds times 3, and then we're going to give the last variation, which is to bring those arms down at a 45-degree angle. And now we're going to angle that tension up into the upper part of the thoracic spine and rib cage. And so she's going to press down at a 45-degree angle and try to press her spine. Go ahead and tuck that chin in a little bit more and lengthen. She's going to press this upper part of the rib cage and spine into the corner of the ceiling, trying to get that separation and opening of this tissue to help mobilize around the rib cage and the spine and be able to breathe into this upper back. Now there's a lot of benefits for what is deep to what we don't see. So we see the spine, we see the rib cage, we see the shoulder blades, we see the muscles around this area. But what is deep to that with the spine is you have your heart in this area, you have your lungs attaching in this area. Most importantly, you have your esophagus, which is what we eat and swallow through, in attached to your spine. We want to make sure that this is all moving. It's kind of like as we breathe and stretch in this area, we're kind of mobilizing and pumping all of this different attachments or tissues or structures that we have associated with the spine and the rib cage in this area. So 3 times 30 seconds in each one of those positions, 3 different stretches, 3 different zones of the spine. Super important for helping with thoracic mobility because we tend to get very stuck in this area. We're going to progress these stretches. So we've done a lat stretch, which is kind of one of the big muscle systems around the thoracic cage to mobilize. We've done a GPS, which is to work in flexion because the spine works very good typically in flexion and extension. Now we're going to work with the next component, which is going to be rotation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take one arm forward with that palm showing, fingers spread. We're going to tuck this arm back and go ahead and turn that hand out, open that hand up. And what we want to do is we want to increase rotation, keeping the head nice and straight. There we go. She's going to push that arm straight forward and pull that elbow straight back. So it's like we're trying to tension around the shoulder girdle to try to rotate the rib cage. So as she presses forward and presses back here, with each breath, keeping tall, she's trying to increase that rotation. Now just make sure that we stay over the top of the pelvis so we have a nice line through the spine. We're not leaning forward. Inhale, exhale, reach and push. Inhale, exhale, reach and push. So you can see a lot of these stretches are really driven off the idea that we're working with respiration. So we want to inhale, which is a contraction, exhale, which is going to relax the contraction of the diaphragm and allow us to further activate that rotation. So these are all very active stretches to increase range of motion. We can go ahead and relax that, go ahead and switch to the other side. Each one of these stretches can be done 3 times 30 seconds, which is one of our standard rule for mobility and stretching. Keep your head looking straight forward. Push forward, pull back. Go ahead and turn that hand like that. Good. Push, push, push. Breathe, breathe, breathe. We want to stay up nice and tall. Lengthen up away from the pelvis. Keep the chin in. Now you can see she's sitting on my therapy table. This is a very standard position, which is easy for me to work with clients because we want the lower half of the body to be fixed. You can kneel on the ground, you can stand in a very fixed position where your toes are in and you're in a very postural position as you try to stretch. But the goal is try to keep that head up nice and tall, keep the chin in, and try to rotate to your capacity, again, over the course of 30 seconds and breathing through each one of those stretches. Now there's 2 variations of that stretch to work with different parts of the spine. Variation number 2 would be to reach up and down with that elbow to try to work lower in the rib cage. So again, just maintaining that head posture and spine posture. So she's trying to press up and away with that arm to try to get lower into the thoracic cage. The other variation would be to bring that arm lower, and now she's trying to get up higher into that thoracic cage with the rotation capacity that she would have through that spine. So that arm's reaching straight forward, the elbow's pulling back, the head is reaching up nice and tall. She's working with the breath every single stretch, and we're going to work with each one of these variations 3 times 30 seconds if we have the time, or we can even just basically work in 30 seconds in each position because we need to work with both sides. So there's several variations of that. Very good exercise for increasing rotation of the thoracic cage and really trying to mobilize the rib cage and the spine.
A lot of details in that one, guys. You might consider coming to his class.
Do it. We're going to do a stretch for the diaphragm. This is a very typical out of the box stretch. This is something that typically most people don't know how to do. So you're lucky that you get to learn from me. We're going to be laying on our side. The knees are going to be up towards the chest, only to the point where we feel like that lower spine's in a nice flat position. We want to make sure that the pelvis stays stacked. You can see that her bottom arm is just forward of her body because I want her head to side bend towards the ground. Now, if this is not a comfortable position for you with the shoulder and with the head kind of side bending because it hurts the neck or the shoulder, then just have your hand underneath your head or have a little bit of a pillow underneath the head to help maximize the position of the spine so you're not putting yourself in a compromising posture. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the top arm of the sky arm to the ground. So you can see how I turned her hand, fingers towards the head with a flat palm. Our goal now is to focus on stretching the diaphragm on the sky side. So part of this, again, because we're working with the diaphragm, if I breathe in, I'm contracting the diaphragm, which is pushing the diaphragm down. If I breathe out, I'm in a relaxed position of the diaphragm, which means I want to stretch at that time. So it's very important that we work with long breaths here, and most importantly, we work with a long breath out so that we can get a long stretch during that breath out. We want our sit bone on the sky side and our elbow on the sky side. Our function is to reach away from each other so that we can elongate here. So what we want to do is we want to breathe in. As we breathe in, we're creating that expansion in the rib cage. Inhale, and on the exhale, now we're active and we're pushing that elbow and that sit bone away from each other. We want to inhale and expand a little bit more, and we want to exhale and we want to push away from each other. Inhale, she's lengthening through the spine. Exhale, we want to maintain the lengthening of the spine and pushing the hip and the elbow away from each other. Inhale, exhale. And again, our typical stretch time is about 30 seconds. So usually anywhere from about 6 to 8 breaths is long enough to do a stretch in one position. And then after that, we can slowly relax. And now we want to move into the next position for the diaphragm. Now we can keep the lower half of the body right where it is. I'm going to have her turn her body so that she can look more up towards the ceiling. The bottom arm can just kind of rest behind the head. The top arm is also going to reach a little bit behind the head. And so now what we're doing in this rotated position, we want to find what that maximum position is. We want to try to keep those knees in a stacked position so that we're not sliding that top knee back. And as she breathes in and breathes out, she's trying to increase that rotation, but at the same time, she's still reaching between that elbow and that hip. So she's going to breathe in, exhale, and reach actively through the spine, from the arm, and from the hip. And we're trying to elongate this, so you should be able to feel some of these stretches right at the base of the rib cage. And if anything, as you breathe in and out and you're active with this, you should feel it deep in that rib cage. So again, 30 seconds, anywhere from 6 breaths to 8 breaths, that's going to be the function of this stretch. The last position, which is a little bit more complicated, is we're going to rotate down towards the table, but we want to keep our legs in the same posture. No, stay on your side and bring this arm back behind you. Okay, So usually on the ground, we can get that arm behind us. We're gonna try to keep our knees stacked up in front of us. We wanna keep our lower spine in a nice flat position. And as she's in this forward rotated position towards the floor, she can take this arm out, or we can take the hand to the top of the head and reach with the elbow. In this case, because we're on the table, I'm gonna have her reach with her elbow. Otherwise, along the ground, I'd have her push with her arm. So again, she's gonna now breathe more into the back of the rib cage where the diaphragm attaches towards the spine in the back of the ribs. And she's gonna stay long through her spine, reaching through the crown of her head with her chin tucked in. And she's gonna press that elbow away as she reaches that sit bone away. So inhale, expand, exhale, elongate. And she's trying to get that stretch, and she should feel that stretch low in the rib cage as she elongates that arm away and breathes. Again, 6 to 8 breaths. We want to do this in all 3 positions because the diaphragm circulates all the way around that rib cage and can really restrict what's happening in the base of that rib cage, aside from restricting any movement through the ribs. So that's going to be our positive position with our elbow reaching. That's going to be all 3 positions. If you have the time to do it, try to do 3 rounds in each position. And if you're doing 1 position at a time, that's good too. And we want to make sure that we do both sides of the body. And that's going to be our diaphragm stretch. We couldn't finish a thoracic routine without doing an Eldoa for the thoracic spine. So the thoracic spine, T8, T9 is about the level of the broad level or the chest level of the back. We're going to have our feet flat to the ground with our knees bent. We want to sit our spine up nice and tall. Now, foot position is dependent on your mobility. The more mobile you are, the more you can bring those feet closer to your body. The less mobile you are, the more the feet are going to go away from your body, to the point where if you can't keep your feet flat because you're too tight, because you can't sit up straight, or you're too rounded in your lower back, then you need to sit up on top of something like some yoga blocks or something else that's a little bit higher up. So keeping those feet nice and flat, the hips or the heels are in line with the sit bones or the hips. We're gonna breathe tall into the ceiling. We're gonna bring both arms forward with external rotation, wrist extension, fingers spread, breathing as tall as we can. So each inhale is trying to lift and lengthen that spine, just like we've been working with respiration to lift and lengthen or open up some of the tissue around the rib cage. We're gonna bring those arms up in position. And as we exhale, we want to press those arms away into the ceiling as the diaphragm relaxes. So inhale, lift, exhale, actively lift. Inhale, follow that breath. Exhale, trying to push up and away. Now again, with the Eldoa, we want to try to maintain everything as straight as we can with the spine and the alignment, making sure that the arms are in a symmetrical position along with the arms and the legs. We want to do this for 1 minute. That's our goal, is to try to reach and lengthen for 1 minute to try to create some mobility and space at T8, T9. So we're going to breathe and lengthen up into the ceiling, keep that active posture, keep the chin in, keep the head in line with the back, symmetry of those arms, keep those feet nice and flat, eyes looking down, maintain the breath. Once the 1 minute's over, we can bring those arms slowly down. We can relax those hands to the thighs, and we can slowly relax all by just moving our spine forward and back. That gives us a little bit of additional mobility to relax some of those muscles that have been working hard, and then also with creating some range of motion in the rib cage and spine. And that is going to be our thoracic cage mobility program. I guarantee if you do those exercises, your breathing will be different, your posture will be different, and most importantly, your rotational capacity in any sport that you play, whether it's just getting out and walking, playing pickleball, playing golf, or whatever it is that you do, will be improved.